You know, I am really surprised that I haven't reviewed Alien Syndrome yet. It's a game I grew up with and borrowed from a friend often. I even have a fond memory of me playing the game as a kid and showing my grandfather how you controlled movements on the screen using the little NES brick they called a controller. Of course, in order to do this, my mom made me stop moving on the final boss, just to show him how the control worked, and it lost me a life, but the game isn't too difficult, and it was still kinda cool to show my grandfather this. Anyway, let's talk about the game itself, shall we? Right from the start, you'll know what you're in for, as the heroes open a door and commence firing at a massive face. Sweet! In Alien Syndrome, you play as one of two characters, Ricky or Mary. They both play identically, so it's just a preference on which gender you prefer. Once you do this, you have 6.5 stages to run through, saving hostages, known as comrades in game, and blasting aliens. You have a limited time to clear each stage, with the game stating that it's a time bomb that has been set prior to arriving at the area. Once you save every hostage, you find the exit and take down the big bad boss that is waiting for you. Do this and you move on to the next area, or in the case after the 6th level, onto a 7th, final boss. Hence why I said 6.5. Of course, this wouldn't be an entertaining game if all you did was save comrades and find an exit, so of course you have aliens that are hunting you down as well. These are your main enemy, and can be blasted with your rifle, with which you have infinite ammo. There isn't a huge variety in the monsters, as each stage only has one type of enemy. Enemies will frequently respawn, and there are generators which pop out more every second or so. Some kill by touch, and some fling some sort of projectile at you. In addition to your standard pea shooter, there are a few power-ups that you can nab in your hunt to save your pals. There are some random point icons, and a warp that will teleport you around. But more importantly, there are different weapons. There is a fireball, a flamethrower, and a laser. The fireball seems to be better against bosses, but isn't much of an improvement over the basic shot against normal enemies. The flamethrower is a short-range blast, but since it lasts for a second or so, it does have its rare use when enemies start to get a little too close for comfort. Best of all though, the laser shears right through the aliens, allowing you to take down multiple at a time. In later stages, this is almost a requirement to keep chopping down monsters as they pop out of the spawners. It also helps when the projectiles can be destroyed, falling through into the enemy that just attacked. It may not have the punch during boss battles, but I feel like it's overall just the best option. Do be warned though that you can accidentally pick up a power-up that will revert your weapon back to the initial shot. I should also mention that all of the power-ups are located on the walls, so they're easy to spot. Along with these, there are also maps on the walls. If you touch one, a small map will pop up in the corner of the screen for a few seconds, showing you the layout of the stage and where all of your comrades are. It can be very useful if you are missing one or two hostages and have no idea where you are going next. The map does not tell you where the stage exit is, however, so you do still need to explore at least a little bit until you memorize the level. Another thing of note is that enemies take a split second to actually die. Once you blast them, their bodies will fall apart, but there is a noticeable delay between the shot hitting and the death animation starting. If you aren't careful, you can actually die by touching an enemy even after you wounded them. Once you complete a stage, you enter a boss room. These bosses are grotesque and somewhat disturbing to behold. Many of them have two parts of the battle, but once you get the patterns down, they aren't terrible to fight. Honestly, sometimes the hardest part of these boss battles is just the time limit. If you are using the laser, since it isn't incredibly powerful, you might be shooting the boss for a while and the time just keeps whittling down with no end in sight, whereas if you're using the fireball, the enemy's projectiles might stop your shot from reaching the weak point. When defeated, some of the bosses explode in a gory fashion. Makes sense now why this game wasn't licensed by Nintendo, huh? Again, the game isn't terribly challenging, but there are some frustrating moments. Your character doesn't have any pep in their step, and some of the creatures will move faster than you. This is most notable in Stage 4, which I personally consider the hardest level in the game. You can only have one shot on the screen at any time, which isn't a problem for the laser, but it is for every other weapon. At least you do get 3 continues to work with, and with only 6 stages plus the final boss, it doesn't take too long to replay the game if you fail. In addition, if you have a friend, you can play through the game in 2-player co-op. Both players must remain on the screen at all times, but that's to be expected in a game like this. and it's still really fun to have both players blasting aliens at the same time. Visually, the game is okay. It won't blow you away, with the stages having few landmarks to understand where you are, but they do get the job done. At least the bosses look good and are detailed though. As for the sound, there's not a lot to it. There are very basic sound effects, and the music is limited in variety, but what does exist is atmospheric and catchy. When you grab the last hostage, the music abruptly changes to a much more upbeat tune, and it rocks as you make your way to the exit. It does the job well. In conclusion, there may not be a lot to Alien Syndrome, but it's still a great experience from start to finish, especially if you can get a friend to tag along. The gameplay is solid, the action is frantic, and the aliens are disgusting. It's one of my favorite games in the system, and one that I come back to frequently. If you can get past the somewhat slow pacing, you'll find a game that is a great way to pass the time. Final score? 6 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.